Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Visiting Speaker Series. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. Our guests this afternoon are the authors of Naked Conversations. They've promised me not to do the talk naked, and if they do disrobe, well, we have this great big podium for them to hide behind, so it'll be okay. Of course, the authors are Shel Israel and Robert Scoble. Robert Scoble, you all know from his Channel 9 fame internally. Shel has been a PR consultant and a technology consultant and what other kinds of consultants?
I was acquitted for that part.
Oh, right. Alleged consultants also in his spare time. And they've just written a fascinating book that is being used in schools, that is being used by folks that are figuring out how to do blogs, how to use blogs, and perhaps most importantly, what exactly are the functions that blogs are serving, not only in our personal lives, but in our business lives as well. So I'm so pleased that they were both able to come up to Microsoft today to chat with us and share with us their work. Please help me welcome Shel Israel and Robert Scoble.
Oh, we're going to be over here.
We're going to have a.
We've been rehearsing this for hours. You'll forgive me for using a few notes, but while I slept peacefully last night, Robert rewrote the presentation.
That's Microsoft style.
Well, we have a history of this. When we were talking about writing the book, Robert wasn't completely engaged. And one night I got a phone call from Robert, who was going with his kid through an In-N-Out burger in the rain somewhere in Silicon Valley, and said, "Shel, I got a great idea. Why don't we blog the entire book? We'll just put it out there. Everybody will tell us some neat stuff, and when publishers see it, they'll know how great it is, and we'll get them to competitively bid for the book on eBay." Yeah. And I slipped a note to my wife and said, "This guy is Looney Tunes," but I had to humor him because I really wanted to work with him on the book. Yeah. So I said, "Oh, why don't you put out a trial balloon or something, and we'll talk about it." And I woke up the next morning to discover that everything he had said to me on the phone was now I had been Scobleized. And I had little choice, and I had extreme discomfort. There's some wily people around here, and they didn't think it was a good idea to competitively bid on eBay, so we made some concessions. But for me, this was a remarkable beginning because I was the reporter. You know, Robert was the fourth guy I'd approached for collaborating on a book, and I was looking for somebody more famous so I could squeeze some bucks out of Wiley. And Robert was the first one foolish enough to really seriously consider it. And I just kind of got into this blogging thing to show I could write, to establish a reputation. And Robert was the believer. He believed something very fundamental had happened that was going to change, I don't want to use our tagline, but change the way businesses and customers could interact with each other. The experience of writing the book with a blog is what convinced me that Microsoft, the home office guy, and every other company on earth is going to end up. Where are you going, Robert?
This isn't forwarding for some reason.
Oh.
It's forwarding up here. It's not forwarding up there.
Can we blame Windows for this? Or?
I'll figure it out while you guys talk.
All right, okay. Great. Let's keep going.
Geez, they're walking out on the stage even, you know? But what happened was we posted early chapters. And the bloggers would come on and say, "That's really lame," or "That's over the top," or whatever, or "You have a typo in line 7,000," or, "You know, you missed this case I know of a company over in England." And essentially, we collaborated with thousands of people in the public spotlight, and we created a book that we think is infinitely better than it would have been had we not done it out there in the open plain. A second thing happened too, which wasn't intentional. I wish I could say it was because it was pretty great, is we created a word-of-mouth engine. We got readers of the blog to become our champions, and they're the ones that are going out and making two unknown first-time authors pretty damn well known. And the blogosphere does that very, very well.
Yep. We're still not getting our slides forward. That's okay. Let's just keep.
Let's just talk.
So one thing, by doing it in public, I think what I was trying to do last night was think about the lessons that where Microsoft should go with blogging. Because obviously we've been very successful at blogging. We have more than 2,000 people blogging. We've gotten a ton of great PR out of that. I mean, you're going to talk a little bit later about how Silicon Valley, the tone on the street when we talk to developers is changing because of the work that employees have been doing to build relationships. And something else has changed. You know, when I was an MVP for 5 years, and I was an MVP on the IE team, and if I had a product request, or if a customer told me that, can you get Microsoft to do something, it was pretty hard to get Microsoft's attention, because I would have to go into a news group where there was a representative there, but it wasn't really somebody from the IE team. It was like an intermediary. So I was talking to an intermediary, trying to convince him that my bug was important enough to pass along to the team, and he's not going to be passionate about my bug or my product feedback suggestion or whatever. Now I can go to MSN or Google or Yahoo and type, OneNote blog, and I'll find Chris Prattley, who runs the OneNote team, and I can.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one.
Okay. Cool.
Back up in a few minutes. Sorry.
Thanks. No problem. And I can, as a customer, I can write him a product feedback idea, write in his comments, and I can see how he reacts to it, and I can see that his team is joining in, and that there's somebody who cares about the product that I can have a conversation with right there, and there's no intermediaries between me and that guy.
Can I ask, how many people here blog? None? One? Oh, whew.
Yeah,
scared
quite
me.
a few.
How many blog more than once a week? Okay. The poster child in our book for corporate blogging is Microsoft, and I don't know how many of you know that, but it's very coincident with the way we started the book, because in the beginning, I, as the outsider, got an awful lot of crap about, I'm dealing with the Borg, the book is going to be evil, and a lot of stuff that I'm sure you've all heard. But what happened in the process of the book involves what happened in Microsoft. The image of Microsoft in the time we were writing the book, which goes back to November of 2004 till August of 2005, really turned around. The company was no longer personified by one or two guys at the top. It was personified by hundreds, even thousands, now 2,000 bloggers in the company. Microsoft developed a more human face. And what happened is a consciousness change from a command and control level of, this is the company, these people speak for 56,000 other people who are now walking in lockstep, into, this is a company whose culture is open enough that the guys on the top trust the people in the middle to talk for themselves. And its policy in blogging is the shortest one ever heard, blog smart. And what I've seen everywhere I've turned is not this dramatic, people don't run up to me and say, oh God, I love Microsoft. I doubt that I'll see that. But what I've experienced very steadily and accelerating in Silicon Valley, where I consult startups, is a new trust of Microsoft, a new liking of Microsoft, some people are siding with Microsoft over Google because Google is the one that now seems big, and whether they're evil or not is starting to be debated a little bit more. And if blogging can do that in that short a period of time for Microsoft, we think it can do it for any company on earth.
Yeah, and you've helped start many companies in Silicon Valley, right? You helped get Napster going.
Actually, I started with launching the wheel, but I blew the launch, and no one knows who the developer is. I've been around a while.
Yeah. So when you're in touch with a lot of people on the street in Silicon Valley, you help RIA, for instance, get get noticed. Tell me about some of the blogs.
You're going to do my resume thing again.
No. Well, this audience doesn't know who you are. They know who I am.
Okay.
So, you know.
I'm as old as dirt, and I've spent my life working with startups. As a PR guy, I like to call myself a recovering publicist. But since the book, one day it was remarkable. I spent 6 months of my life, 7 days a week, working on this book. And then I went to the editor, and the editor said, "Great, here's your last check." And I said, "Wow, there's my last check. What do I do now? I'm unemployed." So I've started consulting companies, and only Web 2.0 companies, only startups. And the deal is that I will work with them until such time as they get a PR agency. And it's not that I'm trying to be anti-PR, it's that I believe that blogging and social media is more powerful and more credible by orders of magnitude than traditional PR has been. And that if you want to get in traditional press, you've got a cheaper, more efficient way of doing it by blogging and joining the conversation in the blogosphere than you do if you hire a PR agency, no offense, Eric, to smile and dial on your behalf. Eric does some smiling and dialing on our behalf, and we love him. But he's not a Web 2.0 company, he's a publisher.
Yeah. And tell me about Foldera and reearch. The blogging world has helped these guys spread very quickly, haven't they?
Very, very quickly. reearch a company with face recognition technology that lets you very rapidly tag your photos, so that you tag about 5 of your kid, you see hundreds of them. They just went into public beta Saturday.
Yeah.
And I understand they've uploaded over 2 million photos as of yesterday night. So by the end of the week, it'll be over 3 million. Foldera is a newer company. You guys ought to buy Foldera. Foldera is a better use folders to organize everything you're working on and constantly updates everybody you're collaborating with. It's really cool. Their launch involved 6 bloggers, 2 of them being here. And they had 1 million people signed up before they went into public beta.
And that, how many days was it?
12.
12 days.
No, I'm sorry, 15 days to the 1 million. I said 1 million. At 12 days, I was premature. It took 15 days.
15 days.
Yeah. 1 million.
All through blog. Not doing
Nothing
any
but
PR,
blogging.
not going to Walt Mossberg, not doing anything like that.
Foldera had to back up and get business cards. They didn't have business cards, but they had 1 million registered users.
Okay. So when I started blogging 5 years ago, one of my best friends said, "Oh, blogging is a fad, and you won't be doing it for more than 6 months," I think he said, you know. And I keep hearing this over and over again, you know, that blogging's a fad, or that blogging, now they're just trying to deride it again. You know, oh, you don't need a blog. But why isn't it? And there's a couple reasons. One is the ascendancy of Google, the ascendancy of search engines, to be more accurate. Today, if you need a plumber, you know, where are you going to find a plumber? You're going to either look at your Yellow Pages. I don't even know where my Yellow Pages is, because I don't use Yellow Pages anymore. You'll call your friends and say, "Hey, I need a plumber. My basement's filling with water. Have you, you know," and I'll call my 4 friends who live in the area, and chances are they don't know a plumber, right? So what's next? You go to a search engine, MSN or Google or Yahoo, and you type "plumber Seattle," you know, leaky pipe expert. And, you know, our iTrack research shows that most people don't click on the second button on a search page, right? So if you're not on that first page of results for the word plumber, Seattle, leaky pipe expert or something like that, you don't exist in business. And you really don't exist for anything. You know, if we're talking about, you know, some sort of philosophy or religion or whatever, you know, you type in a search engine, you're trying to find something. If you're not on the first page, you don't exist. You know, you go and try another search and look for that result. So how do you get into that first page? Well, you know how the MSN and Google results work, or the algorithms work. It works largely on linking. So if I have 500 inbound links and Shel only has 200 and we're both plumbers in Seattle, I'm going to be higher on the page than he is. Well, how do I get links? You know, the first thing is change your page a lot. You know, a 1990s site that just stays the same and has a picture of your truck isn't going to get a lot of people to link to it. Where even if I'm doing it badly and I'm just changing the page and putting up press releases and interesting information, I'm going to get more accidental links to my site than Shel would if he's keeping a static page. But let's assume we're both doing a site that changes a lot. Well, and he's doing the press release kind of site, hey, look at my truck, here's a customer I dealt with, da-da-da. And I'm actually sharing information with you, and I'm teaching you how to do plumbing. Here's how to change a shower head. Here's how to do,
6 tips for keeping me out of your house.
Yeah, exactly. How to hire a plumber or whatever. Give away all the secrets of your craft. Well, that gets more people to link to you, because now bloggers are going, man, there's this guy who's teaching me how to plumb, and he's actually pretty good, and he puts pictures and video and audio up, and he's writing in a style that's interesting, and he has comments, and I can ask him a question and get an answer back, and da-da-da. Well, of course I'm going to get more links. So that's what's pushing the blogging fad up the search engines, and the search engines bring a lot of money. There's a reason that Google has a share price of around $400, right? Being high on Google, even if it's on the right side of the page, is very valuable.
Just one interruption. Interrupt at any time. We use PowerPoint because we tend to wander off in all directions. But yeah, we like Hugh McLeod's cartoons. He's very popular European blogger. But we don't like standing behind wooden things, and we don't like giving lectures. We like conversations more. And all you people who are seeing us through those black bubbles in the ceiling, I say hi, and I wish you could talk to you. But anybody in the room that agrees or disagrees or wants to know something, just raise your hand at any point.
There's a principle behind that, too. There's more intelligence, more knowledge, more wealth, more experience out here than there is up here.
Particularly when Robert and I
particularly on the welfare. And that's the principle of doing an open blog with open comments where people can come in and add to the conversation.
You got a question right
So
here.
when you talk about linking, I totally get, like, if I'm adding valuable content to the site through blogging or whatever, then people are going to link to my site. But when you mentioned accidental linking, what's that?
I'm just saying that somebody's going to say, hey, there's a new blogger in town, or there's a blogger who's, he just released a new product, like NewsGator yesterday released a new product and put a press release out and changed their site. So a site that has some change is going to get more links than a site that never changes, right?
Okay, but it's all intentional. Someone is actually...
Yeah. Every time I link, it's pretty intentional that I'm linking to them. Yeah. Unless you're a spammer, by the way, and then you get links. There's a whole range of...
Don't get us started on that. Not today.
The other reason it's not a fad is the what I call the 5 pillars of conversational software, the 5 things that made blogging hot. And the first one was it's easy to publish. When I published websites in the 90s, I had to use Front Page or Dreamweaver, or I had to hand code in Notepad, and I had to understand at least that there's a server and that I had to get my files up there. I had to understand a lot about page design, and I had to understand enough about HTML to debug why a word wasn't looking right on my page. With blogging, you go to a blogs tool like spaces.msn.com or Blogger or TypePad. You sign in with your email address. You get a box. You type in the box. You hit post, and you have a blog. You can have, so. There's a trucker that's driving across the United States who blogs. He never would have blogged with the older technology, right? The second reason is discoverability. When in the old world, in the 1990 world of web publishing, when you put up your website, nobody found it. eBay on its first day in business had absolutely 0 traffic to its servers. And so it's only after you started telling all your friends, hey, check out my cool site, that it started taking off, and it took off slowly. Also, search engines, you would have to go to AltaVista and say, add my site, and have the search engine spider visit you, or go to Google, or go to Yahoo. And today, there's a site called weblogs.com. So anytime I type a blog and hit post, it pings weblogs.com, and also usually the newer blog tools will ping Technorati and some other places, and it'll tell the world, hey, there's a new blog that just opened up. I've done some tests. I think when I talked to the European Football Association, I did a blog right before I got on stage with them, and by the end of the talk, my post was in Technorati already. So that tells me, without doing any work, I'm already in, when I post, I'm joining all these search engines and other services that watch these weblogs.com. The third thing was, in the old world, let's say you link to me, off of your website to my website, I'd never know that until the end of the month when I got my ISP report. Now I see that in live time. And I see it two ways. One, I see your refer ping on my refer page, and also I watch Technorati for any mention of my name or any mention of my URL. So I see it almost within an hour that you link to me, and then I can click on the link and see what you said about me, and I can have some sort of cross-domain conversation. The fourth thing was permalinking. In the old world, if you had a web page with 5 separate pieces on it, and let's say I wrote about a television on the first piece, and a telescope on the second piece, and a cell phone on the third piece, and I knew you were interested in a new cell phone. Well, if I wanted to email you that chunk of content, I'd have to email you the whole page and say scroll down to the item about the cell phone. Now every time I post a post, it has a little permalink underneath it, which makes it very easy to get the URL and email where I am that around, or link to it on my blog or your blog or whatever. And that helps ideas go viral and news go viral very quickly. Also helps the search engines like Technorati find very specific posts on very specific things. And the fifth thing is
viral, syndicatable, and linkable.
Yeah. And so the fifth thing was syndicatable, which means back in the 90s when I was into the web, it was a rare day that I'd visit more than 10 websites. I mean, there was news.com and MSNBC and Slashdot and a few others, and I wouldn't really visit that many sites because there wasn't that many people writing every day, and there wasn't that much diversity of information sources available. And today I have 800 people that I read on a regular basis that come into Outlook as part of their RSS aggregator. And it makes it far more efficient to read that many sites with an aggregator than with a web page, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But that's why it's not a fad. So, anti-marketing marketing. This is something I almost fell into accidentally, but there were 3 trends in Silicon Valley that caused blogging to really take off, and it took off right around 9/11, at least in my sphere. I was in the blogging circle. I had geek dinners because I worked at a blogging vendor, and at that geek dinner there was Evan Williams, who started Blogger, who got sold to Google. There was Ben and Mina Trott, who started 6 Apart. There was the guy, Brad, who started LiveJournal, all in one dinner, And there were 3 forces that I noticed later on that caused blogging to happen at that time. One was we were all laid off, or underemployed at the time, and we had a lot of time to just sit around and either the geek. There were 2 camps, right? There was the geeks there who had enough time to build tools. That's what Ben and Mina Trott did. They were bored and they wanted to build a content management system so that they could send blog posts back and forth to each other. And then there was the guys like me who were just wanting to write about our lives and write about what we were noticing. The second force was we were sick of the corporate scandals that were going through the world, the Tycos, the WorldComs, the Enrons, and the dot-com boom and bust, which was the reason we were all laid off, right? I mean, and we wanted some way to see transparently into the companies we were going to join, what was this company about? And we also wanted to be able to talk to the press and have a different kind of conversation than we had in the 98, 99 timeframe, where they misled us. They really didn't tell us that the bust was coming. They didn't warn us. They didn't, really do their homework in a whole lot of ways. And we wanted to be some sort of checking balance so that if that bubble ever got built again, we could sort of nudge our friends and say, hey, be careful here. You're about to get burned, And the third thing was we were just being marketed to all day long. I mean, you stand out on Times Square. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and I counted 300 marketing messages, right, coming down at you. And they're all purified marketing messages. They're marketing messages that were done by committee, And they only say, look at me, we're pretty, we're pure, and our product doesn't stink, right? Which, so let's say you watch a Super Bowl commercial for a Sony camcorder, and then you watch one for a Canon camcorder, and you can't tell any differences between them because they don't tell you anything. They just say, hey, look, Canon is going to make you feel good, and Sony is going to make you feel like even better. And
so let me ask you. Your tagline there says something about an unprofessional video. So what does Channel 9 have to do with everything you're talking about?
Well, here's what's the breakthrough. The traditional marketing belief in big companies today is if you put video or if you put anything out in the public sphere, it has to be purified. It has to go through a committee, an ad agency has to do it. It has to look like Steve Jobs did it, with everybody has to be wearing makeup and has to be in a studio with lighting, and it has to be vetted by 15 PR people. Sorry, and it has to go through lawyers and da 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 da. And I've talked to marketing people like at Procter and Gamble and other companies, Sony and stuff. And yeah, they still have this belief. Imagine you go into General Motors and say, hey, I want to walk around with a camcorder, and I'm going to do it. It's going to be with a little $700 camera. And I'm just going to walk into somebody's office and say, hey, who are you and what do you do, and tell me what you do, and I'm going to put that out there without showing it to the PR team and getting legal approval, and that shuts down all conversation right there. It's like, get off campus, man. You're not working here no more. But because it was allowed to happen here, we're getting a new kind of conversation where people believe what we're showing them because they can see that it's not edited. It's done in somebody's office. It's a conversation. They don't try to hide when the computer crashes or when it's slow. And it's like, wait a second, you're admitting there's fault. I asked the guy who was architect of the origami, what's wrong with this thing? Tell me what's bad about it. And you could see his reaction to that. That made him a lot more believable than if it was just origami's got to change your life kind of video.
I think this is personal. I don't think I've ever said it to you. This is a hell of a good place to say it, though, that Channel 9 has done more for this company than any other single thing. And part of it is that I don't see you at all. I just keep seeing these people who, I'm not a developer, I'm not a geek, and I only started watching Channel 9 because I had this strange partner who was involved with it. But I saw all these really cool guys who were really trying to do something interesting. And I've been in technology since 1979, and I was just unaware of all these people at Microsoft doing cool stuff. If I were a developer trying to do business with you, it would just change it would turn it all upside down.
Yeah.
Had that become a documentary, an infomercial of once a week, here's Microsoft presenting the best and the brightest, it would have sucked. It would have been just one more lame way that money got spent.
Yeah. Yeah, and it got worse from there, right? Because we put right underneath the videos, we put the ability for the customers to say, hey, you suck. And we don't pull that down.
Some did.
Some do, But remarkably few do. A lot fewer than we expected when we started it. We expected it to be more like, what I've experienced in the past week. And it hasn't been.
What's that? Don't.
Anyways, there's something there, and I've had vice presidents of marketing at Procter and Gamble come up to me and go, "How can we do a Channel 9?" And the problem is they can't and for a couple of reasons. One, they need somebody who has enough relationships in the company to be able to walk into somebody's office and say, "Hey, can I shoot you for this little video thing I'm doing?" And if it's a low-level kid coming out of college. And somebody, if somebody at college came out without a name that you didn't recognize, came over to your office and said, "Hey, I want to shoot a little video," you'd go, "Have you talked to PR about this?" And you'd start calling around. It's like, because you want to protect your career against somebody who's trying to hurt you, and you don't trust this guy, so you're going to start calling around to his boss and his, and the whole process is going to get slowed down, and everybody's going to go into the permission, behaviors that we see here, right?
Next.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's another reason. The executives at the top have the relationships, but they don't have the time, and they don't understand the small things. They don't understand the power of speaking to an audience of 30 people. Bill can buy a page in the New York Times and not notice the money missing out of his account. and he can talk to millions of people. So why do I need to do a little video talking to, back then, before I started, it was to nobody, right? Now it's, 2.8 million a month. But even then, it's like, I can go on Larry King and get to that many people, And so there's the executives, the people at the top of the company are not able to do something that talks to small audiences, micro audiences. And people at the bottom of the company aren't able to build enough relationships to get trusted fast enough to do something interesting like Channel 9. And it was because we allowed blogging here that I was able to build enough relationships and then get enough trust to bootstrap it and get it going, and get Bill Hill to do the first video with us.
Okay.
So trends.
Trends. The executive summary is there's a whole mess of blogging going on. According to both the New York Times and Technorati, there are 100,000 blogs started every day. According to PubSub, there's 2,000 posts put on these blogs every minute. There are currently 31 million bloggers. The number of business and corporate bloggers is increasing. All these numbers are highly suspect because it is hard to determine how many blogs are started and abandoned. Technorati says it's about 45%. That may or may not be accurate. There was this guy from Groove Networks who used to do this brilliant blogging and then just stop and just...
Ray Ozzie?
Yeah, just when you take it down, he was back with something else brilliant. So I don't know whether he was considered a serial abandoner or not, but when he was up, he had pretty good rankings.
Yeah.
What is really clear is that this is all happening while another problem is becoming more evident, and that is the traditional marketing tactics continue to get more expensive at about the same rate they become less effective. So on one hand, before you even bring in social media, you have a situation where people don't listen, don't like, don't hear the messages being tossed out. We use technology to block marketing. We use TiVo, mute buttons, spyware,
Even when you can't block it, like in Times Square, there's 400 billboards screaming at you, and it's only the multi-million.
I'm in the middle of a roll here.
Okay.
Jesus. You did it again. There's the rug.
Now you know what doing the book's like.
As I was saying, the other side of it is corporations are using technology the same way. You call up and you hear the human you have called is not in service at this time. You go to the website to remember when the web was going to make us interactive. You go there and you look for a human, and you find the person you want to speak to is called info@corporation.com. So both sides have been using technology to get away from each other, to shut out the other side. Into this comes blogging and a whole lot of other social media, podcasts. I don't have to list them in this room, but this is something new. This is a recreation of the conversation. And conversations have been the way we've done business since the cave, when Orc and Mork sat around the fire and communicated by smearing berries into little animals on the cave wall. At some point, it became uneconomic to have conversations. If you're Microsoft and you're located in, 100 countries?
Something like that.
How do you speak with all these people all at once? And you can't. But with a blog, what you can do is have conversation with those that care the most about it. Those that love you the most, those that care about your products the most and want to tell you how to improve them, those that hate you and want to tell you why. And as Mike Torres from Microsoft tells us, if you have a blog, they come and speak in your house and they're a little more polite. So I got off the track a little bit from trends, but what is going on is no fad. Guidewire Group, a group headed by Chris Shipley, who is the executive producer of Demos conferences, did a survey in October of last year that said 90% of American mid-sized and large corporations are devising blog strategies, and most of them plan to blog within the next 1 to 2 years. Yeah. Now, these are corporations, so 1 to 2 years can be 2 to 3 years, but there is an avalanche coming. It is not stoppable. blogging has already hit the
Our
tipping
competitors
point.
tell me that they started blogging because we started blogging. So it forces, because of the search engine trend. If you want to be high up on search engines, you better figure out how to get people linked to you and participate with you. When I helped run a camera store in Silicon Valley in the 1980s, 80% of my sales came from word of mouth. And our most fearsome competitor, Google, IBM is actually number one, right? On Bomber's list this week. But Google doesn't do any advertising. They completely built through word of mouth, through people telling other people, hey, you should go and use this search engine. And that trend is not any different today than it was in the 1980s. It's just that the word of mouth network now is probably 1,000 times more efficient. In the 1980s, we didn't have email, we didn't have IM, we didn't have blogs, we didn't have wikis. All I had was the ability to go into a break room and say, hey, I know you're a photographer, where should I buy a camera this weekend? Now I can go online and do a search, and I'll find people talking about camera stores all over the world, and I'll be able to ask them questions, why did you pick that one or that one? I'm talking to 10,000 people a day, maybe even 40. That builds a network that's far more efficient, and news now goes around the world just on the blogs within an hour. It's really amazing.
Two questions back there.
Yeah.
We'll take the one on the right first.
I was wondering, so it sounds like if blogging and word of mouth is significantly more efficient in the role of PR, if you see it as a dying role, or if there's still a place for what that place is.
Oh, let me take that one.
You get the PR one. Since you're the expert of this field.
I was in PR for 25 years. I might have mentioned that earlier. I think that the traditional model for lots of things is broken. I think the traditional PR is probably the most broken of anything, and a lot of the big agencies and the best thinkers in those agencies, including WagEd and Edelman, other prominent agencies, they already know this, and the good news is a lot of the clients don't, so they have time to refigure and recalibrate what they're doing. Again, blogging didn't do it. The problems are already there. One of the problems is that the press is not as influential as it used to be. One of the problems is PR is somewhat elitist. The way I practiced it, when I started in the late 70s, I needed to know about 15 people to protect my clients' interests. I could rub their shoulders, I could know what was on their mind, I could keep conversations going, and I could feed them stuff from my clients who would come and go, and while they were there was news that would go to them. Thanks to the blogosphere, everyone's influential, and this really kind of creams the way that PR has worked. Crisp launches are, there's still the moment for SEC's sake where the financial impact press release goes across the wire. But launches begin long before that. People get involved with telling companies how to make a product better at launch. And I think that the PR needs to change, and change pretty dramatically. How? Become a facilitator. Become much wiser in knowing what the customer wants and bring the information back, rather than sit in the company's side of it and try to shove the information the company wants to get outward.
Yeah.
So sort of on the same lines.
Okay, good.
So
That means I get to talk.
Right, so you already sort of answered half my question, which was, so you already said 90% of companies are willing to embrace blogging, but to what extent, right? So, how do you see them as, do they see blogging as sort of another way for PR to reach their customers, or do they actually see it the way you guys say it, and, do they get it? Do they understand that this isn't really the corporate speak, this is like, you have to connect with the customer on a personal level?
They're having the hardest time. The corporations see this ocean out there and they know they have to get in it. And they put a toe in and they put their hands up here and then they withdraw and they have a committee meeting about their experiences with the toe in there. But they're going to get it. They're going to get it because they have to get it. In the last year, it's been great, because when we began, they treated us disdainfully. When I was at BlogOn, I got kind of sarcastic on the stage because I walked around for 3 days hearing how blogging just sucked. It was just a disruption. It was a bunch of diarists and liars and evil people. I can't use that word. But then they started trying to figure out how they can take what they do and get it into this box called blogging and push it in, and it didn't fit. And they tried things and it didn't work. They tried character blogs and the blogosphere came and lit their torches and sharpened their stakes and came after them. But corporations, it isn't an emergency. It isn't like if they don't embrace blogging tomorrow morning, their world will end. They have a long time to turn around the big super tanker of each corporation. And as they do, they're getting wiser. Every time they go out and they have a bad blog, they come back and they come up with something new and they try again because they have to. Yeah. Did that answer it? Or?
Actually, I have a little bit more on that. Companies that I see go through a progression. The first progression is, oh, we have to do it just for PR. You know, if we're the first plumber in town to do a blog, you'll probably get mentioned in the local newspaper just the same way I was, because I was one of the first Microsoft, bloggers, although Joshua Allen's not here, but he was the first one. There was about 100 people when I joined. But I got a lot of PR. Joshua got a lot of PR. There's people who still, Derek has been in the Wall Street Journal, if I remember right. There's still a good PR bubble out there for new companies in a new area that doesn't have a lot of blogging to just jump in and start doing something interesting and they get noticed. A winery that we know in South Africa doubled their sales in less than a year just through starting a blog. That's all they did.
Not only that, they sent several cases of wine free to our lunch party, which makes them very special.
And it was good wine too. So, go figure. The next progression is more people start. So you can tell those companies, like General Motors, only an executive blogs there. It's not the guy on the factory floor that blogs. It's not really authentic. You don't really get to have this conversation with the guy building the transmission in your car, and ask him, well, why does it shift weird? You just don't get to talk to those people because they're still afraid of losing control of the message that we are perfect, our products are perfect, and everybody else sucks.
All the rhetoric that you learned in Marketing and PR 101, control the message, speak with one voice. You shouldn't even speak in harmony, never mind one voice. What's turned it around for Microsoft and will work at other companies is you can speak with 56,000 voices.
Yeah. But we're on a journey, and when we really know we've got blogging is when product feedback gets into the products from customers who said, hey, your product sucks, can you fix X? And X gets fixed in a year or whatever, and the customer goes, damn, you listened, and we're already noticing that on some blog. The Internet Explorer blog, I don't know if you've seen around the blogosphere, but people are going, I used to really hate Microsoft, and I used to really hate Internet Explorer. I pointed to a couple of them last night, but they're fixing stuff that I yelled about, and that's interesting. They hadn't done that for 6 years, and now I'm feeling better about it. And they have this conversation. I can meet them at conferences, and I can see what they're thinking about. And they put out, sort of what they're thinking about, and have this conversation that draws me into the company and makes me emotionally feel like the product is part of me too, not just something that you guys do in behind a secret closed door.
There's a bunch of them. He was first, I think.
Yeah.
For us now talking about expanding the number of people blogging, and it seems like this is just going to generate a huge problem in the identity and the reputation space. And I haven't heard you talk about reputation at all. And if I want to be you, it's not going to be that difficult for me to impersonate you online. I may not be able to be you at the same thing, but I could use first and last as some other address and say I'm you. So how does the identity and reputation?
It's going to be really hard to take my blog over and become Robert Scoble. You can fake me in a comment. I've seen that done. The thing is, I'm watching, and I immediately jump on people when they do that. And I also tell the guy who owns that blog, hey, this guy's impersonating me. I call him up. And this is why I read 800 blogs, and I just don't react only to memorandum or the blog search engines now. By reading 800 people, I get to know who they are, and I also get to know when I meet them at a conference or a camp, a mashup camp, or even for dinner. I had lunch with 4 bloggers on Sunday, So I get to meet them on a personal level, and they learn to trust me there, so that when I see something going on that's nasty, I can call them up and say, hey, there's somebody hoaxing you about me or whatnot. The deeper problem is, who do you listen to? And I'm going through that, because a lot of comment comes toward you. Do you listen to the CEO of Adobe the same way you listen to some kid in Australia? I try to, because that kid in Australia with 5 readers can break a news story that causes massive problems for us. But it's clear that if somebody from Adobe calls me up and says, hey, I'm having a problem with Microsoft, he gets a little bit better treatment internally. And I need to know who those people are and sort of how to discern them when they're commenting.
Yeah, just adding very quickly to that, and there's a whole batch of questions, which is good news. If you blog, your reputation, everybody gets to decide what they think of you. Your reputation no longer gets marketed. You've put yourself out there. In Robert's case, thousands of people can decide what they think of him. And there's really, nobody could steal that from him. Nobody could steal what I've written or said from me. And that's, to me, much more effective than going to a website and seeing the 9 user testimonials that the PR agency has put up there that all sound uncannily alike. I mean,
if they come, all the plumbers in Seattle blog, every single one of them.
One of them.
Now you're going to find. Now, how do you know whose reputation?
One of them will be the top ranked one.
Yeah.
But top ranked by who? That's what I say.
By the search engines.
So ranking by reputation.
That's exactly what I mean. If you talk to the MSA guys, that's exactly
ranking
what
is connected to reputation. Yes. Linking is connected to reputation.
And if you're in business, you better care about your reputation online, because that's how your customers are going to find you. When I was running a camera store, I cared about what my Yellow Pages ad looked like, because that was where a large number of the 20% of people who actually came through advertising came from. And if I didn't have a good looking ad, and if I didn't say lowest prices in San Jose guaranteed, my customers stopped coming because they went to San Jose Camera, who said the same thing or whatnot.
We've got a bunch of questions. We're running out of time.
Same theme about reputation and trust. How do you then, on the converse, trust the message that you're getting from the comments? Yeah. How do you gave the example of, originally there was no way for you as a user to talk to a product manager at Microsoft.
Yeah. The question was, how do I trust the comments coming in?
Yeah. How can you as the product manager listen to what's coming in and then pick the one that genuinely is from the customer? Is a genuine good idea?
Yeah, that takes some skill of knowing your product and doing other work other than just the blog, and also building relationships and going to conferences and seeing people outside of the blogosphere, because the blogosphere can mislead you. It is an echo chamber. The blogs attract the most passionate people in society, right? Howard Dean, when he was running for president, seemed like he was going to win the nomination because he had all the most passionate people, and he was raising the most amount of money of any candidate, which is the power of the passionate people. But that message didn't translate to the normal everyday mass, and you got to keep your reality check there.
When I get a comment from someone I don't know, I go to Technorati, and I see what their rankings are, I see who links to them, and I see if they know people I know. If they don't, and they're talking about a subject that I write about regularly, I will not discount them, but I would hold them at arm's length until a third party somehow or other emerged to confirm that they were a valid and reliable person to speak to. Yeah. And Technorati for me is more valuable that way than it is in the little counts that I get every day.
Yeah, the community can also do its own ranking. Right? The Internet Explorer team was getting 1,000 comments on one post. The community so cared about Internet Explorer, they went over to Channel 9 and created a wiki page prioritizing what they wanted the Internet Explorer team to do. And when you have 1,000 people all converging on one page and re-ranking everything, it ends up pretty close to what the team actually wanted to do anyways.
Yeah. He's got a question over here.
Yeah.
So does it have a lot to do with, the domain name.com bust? People trusted these domain name.coms. They put up pretty pages. They couldn't deliver. They went out of business. So kind of it's a backlash. Saying, I'm going to rather trust this almost non-entity for me, and rather listen to him. He's like a guy on the street whom I ask directions for. Yeah. Than some big corporation who can spend a lot of money. And
the question was, do blogs work, or this kind of new media work, because it's not so corporate. That's where I was getting with the anti-marketing marketing. Yeah, it does. It's more trusted. Buzz Bruggeman, who is the CEO of ActiveWords, a small startup company, one day had a 5-star review in USA Today on the front page of the business section with a picture, full bore, every CEO's PR dream, right? It's like, I'm in USA Today, 2 million subscribers or 2 million readers on the front page of the business section, and I'm going to get the servers ready. I'm going to get tons of downloads today. He had 30 downloads. I linked to him with one paragraph. He got 450 downloads. And why? Because I'm more trusted. I'm somebody you can have a day in, day out relationship with. You see continually whether I bring you good stuff or whether I take you to crappy stuff, and you build a trust over time of me and other bloggers like that.
There's all kinds of surveys, I'll get to you in just a second, that show we trust people who are like we are. And blogging is very peer-to-peer. We find people who look and sound like us. We look at them not one time, but over time. We come back, in his case, 27 times a day, in my case, a few times a week. But we start saying, I know this person. I kind of trust this person. I like this person on movies, but I hate him on restaurants. And so it is this peer-to-peer, people like us thing that's going on. Somebody's called it conversational marketing, and I have a love-hate with the relationship because the word marketing alone is still, I'm putting it out there, I'm giving it to you. And it's just conversational, period. You had a question back there.
More of a detailed question. How did you track how many downloads he got as a result of the blog?
He was tracking his server. He saw, he has refers too. Click, how many people came over, and if you're in marketing, you better be tracking where does my traffic come from? Where do my downloads come from? Who is talking about me in a favorable way or an unfavorable way? Why are they doing that? How can I improve the product? How can I make people talk about me? I mean, if you're at MSN right now or Windows Live, right? They're talking about this. How do we get people to try us instead of Google? Even if we match them in quality, which we probably will in the next year sometime. That's going to be a hard challenge. And understanding who's talking, who are the influencers, and who can, like if I'm in the search space, I know Danny Sullivan has a huge readership of people who care about search. So he's the first guy I'm going to tell the day that I noticed that MSN or that Windows Live is better than Google. He's the first guy I'm going to say, here's 20 searches I just did, and they're finally better. And I can't say that today, but when I can, he's the first guy. John Vattel's the second guy. And then from there, there's a whole string of people that I know by reading them that they're influential and authoritative. Like a good blog is passionate and authoritative, unless you're talking to Dare, who hates passion. Right? You read Dare's blog last night; it was pretty funny.
He walked out on us.
Yeah, he walked out on us. He had to go to the meeting.
Let's talk about Dare.
Yeah.
So there could be some other downside in terms of preventing corporate to reveal some trade secrets.
Okay, go ahead. Repeat the question.
The question is, well,
trade secret.
What's to stop blogs from revealing trade secrets? And Charlene Lee of Forrester is a big corporate research consulting firm, did a study and discovered that to date, with all these blogs we've talked about, there has not been one example of IP being given away through a blog. However, it's being given away every day through your email. So maybe the lawyers are worrying about the wrong communications mechanism. Yeah. Likewise, there has not yet been a lawsuit against the company caused by something an employee has blogged. Not one. Okay, that gets into the downsides because I can go through a few others. There have been over 50 and less than 100 people who claim they were fired for blogging. I think most of them, I think all of them were fired for doing something on a blog they would have been fired for if they'd done it somewhere else. If you say on a blog something disparate, what's the guy from Whitestone who was shocked to find himself fired because he kept likening his boss to the pointy-headed guy in Dilbert? He was shocked that they fired him just for blogging. Now, going around making fun of your boss is going to get you whacked, and it should. Go ahead.
So you were saying how blogging goes towards
away from one message being given by a company to a large set of disparate messages being given by the people.
Yeah.
So at Microsoft, you frequently get into a situation where the interests of large groups may be misaligned. Sometimes the office is going to really hurt or cannibalize sales from Visual Studio, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right? The worry there is that the people doing the blogging, if they're not privy to those decisions and those influences at the executive level, right? If they're just down in the trenches of Office or Visual Studio, they're going to publish things that are going to compromise what will be decided as the strategy of the company.
I think that's one place where Microsoft was brilliant and was ready to blog. We have very strong information sharing systems here. We have mailing lists on everything from buying concert tickets to, Visual Studio or Google even, right? And we can share instantly what, we just heard of a news story. What's going on? What is the truth? And also, I have on my IM executives around the company, and I can ask them, can you please explain why you guys are doing this and what I should be talking about in the public? And one of the rules here is, or not really a rule, but a guideline is, blog about what you know, right? If you're not on that team and involved in that decision, stay quiet for a while and see what happens out in the world before you jump in and mouth off, and then get in trouble because you screwed up somebody's PR or stepped on some toes or whatever. And it's really easy to call people here in the company and say, "Hey, I just saw this about it, MSN Spaces, and what's the truth? What's going on?"
Just a really smart blogger, and I'm not saying all bloggers are really smart, will ask the question before they publish something. And I do it. I almost wrote a negative story about a large blog authoring tools, and I wrote them and I said, "I'm thinking of doing this story. This is why. What's your answer?" And they convinced me that my side of it wasn't necessarily true. They didn't convince me enough to be on their side, so I wrote nothing. If I were an employee and I was going to complain about the company, I would send an email saying, "This is what I'm thinking of writing. This is why I'm going to write it. Is this not true?" And give them a chance to say, "I really wish you wouldn't do that. Let me tell you why." We don't encourage employees to go out and go beyond their purviews and what they say to the outside. One of the reasons we're so in love with blogging is it's proving to be such a credible channel, although there's this constant barrage of garbage being hurled at it to make it not credible. There's the lawyers worrying about, if this kid breathes and we don't review it, we could have a shareholder. It doesn't happen that way.
On the other hand, I break that rule, and I break it once in a while. When I do break that rule, I have a definite idea of where I want the company to go, and I go in knowing the risks I'm taking and the consequences thereof. When I told Ballmer that he should back off of the gay rights thing, I knew that I could get fired. I knew that there could be repercussions to my career or whatnot. I felt it was important enough for me to take that risk to try to get an outcome that I wanted to have. So you have to decide that for yourself, but always go in with your eyes open. When I interviewed Mark Jen, he didn't go in with his eyes open. He didn't know the risks he was taking.
Everyone know who Mark Jen is?
Mark Jen worked at Google for 2 weeks and got fired because he pissed off all his coworkers over 2 weeks by just blogging negative stuff, and then he posted some financial results he saw in a meeting, and that was, he poured fuel around his feet. Yeah, but he poured fuel around his feet by pissing everybody off for 2 weeks, and then he lit the match by putting something out there that was a fireable, obviously fireable.
When we blogged about this, and then I wrote a blog afterwards and said that, as far as I can see, no one has ever been fired for blogging. Mark Jen has taken issue twice now with me, saying, yes, he could not possibly have been fired if he didn't have a blog. I'll give Mark his due, but knowing him as I do, I think he would have found another way.
So I think we're over time, and we'll take one more question. Yeah.
I work in marketing communications for Microsoft Learning, so it's a group of about 400 people.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of a fine line I think we're walking, because obviously we want to embrace the kind of individuals reaching out to our customers, but there's also, I think, a role for the traditional, static, vetted, approved, consistent information. So how do we let our customers know that they should look to everyone, but I know that the 40 people from Microsoft Learning blogging aren't all saying the same thing. That's not all correct.
That's an argument. The question was, how do we know, is there a difference between the official, vetted, spokesperson who speaks on behalf of the company and gives the official point of view, and a blogger who's just talking live without vetting, without checking with anybody. There is a difference. We're arguing this out in my team. It's like, because a blogger, Neville Hobson, is asked our PR team, like, are bloggers spokespeople? Can I consider them as official spokesperson? My argument is, yeah, you're on the record. When you write, you're on the record. You're quotable. You can be taken. My posts have been posted in the Wall Street Journal without even being asked. And so you're always on the record. When you're writing in public space, you're always on the record. It's like being up here on stage. You always are on this record, and you can be quoted by other people.
Your receptionist is on the record. When they pick up the phone and someone says, can you tell me what your department does? They're on the record, and what they say can and will be used against the company.
But there is a place for having, if you're outside and you don't know what the truth is, there is a guy you finally figure out, that is the spokesperson for a team. And like Frank Shaw is the guy I always go to. He's the vice president at Wagner Edstrom, who's in charge of the Microsoft account. And he always knows what the correct story is, and he knows how to get me in touch with the right Microsoft employees to communicate that story.
There's two more questions, but did we answer your question?
I think so. I'm trying to figure out, is the traditional website going to die? But I don't think so, because there has to be a place to go back and confirm
if there are questions about.
I think you're seeing two forces rubbing against each other, and one hasn't won out over the other. I mean, is Ray Ozzy's blog an official spokesperson's blog? Obviously, because he's an executive of the company. Is the IE team's blog an official vetted blog? Yes, because they actually vet everything they put on that blog with each other and with their PR teams. Is my blog an official? It's less so, because, yeah, I'm very visible and I'm a Microsoft employee, but I'm not as authoritative as the IE team blog, and I'm certainly not as authoritative as Ray Ozzy. So on the outside world, there should be a pecking order in your mind, like, oh, Ray Ozzy said it. That's quotable as the Microsoft way. The IE team said it. That's probably quotable. I might call and verify it just to make sure I have my T's crossed. Robert Scoble said it. I should probably call Frank Shaw and make sure.
But it's Joe Customer who won't have any clue the difference between the blogs that are.
Joe Customer shouldn't know whether he's looking at a blog or a website. Joe Customer goes to Google and he finds the highest ranking on a topic that interests him. He goes and he lands on a page. He doesn't necessarily know whether it's RSS enabled. He doesn't immediately notice whether it's written in reverse chronology or forward chronology. He just notices whether there's something interesting there. I think static web pages are going to go the way of collateral materials. They're going to continue to exist for a steadily diminishing audience, but I think the action is in blogging. I think RSS, which we haven't even touched on, is the answer to making websites less static and more dynamic. There are two more questions. Can we keep going?
Yeah, two more questions.
Okay, there's two more questions. 1, 2.
Too much comment to figure out what you said. I don't agree that the official sanctioned vetted source is always correct as opposed to the guy that implemented the feature, for example.
Did any of us say that?
The point was that the official information source is not always the most correct, especially when the guy who actually built you the product is telling you something else, right?
Yeah. The second thing is that I don't think that Joe Customer can't distinguish between the guy that drove this and the marketing person and, say, the CEO. I think Joe Customer needs to be given the credit to be able to decide who they want to trust.
Yep. He's going to trust the one who feels the most like he is. Yeah. I trust people like me. We said one more. We got signaled only one more, and your hand's not going back. Oh, it was you. I'm sorry. It was off one. Yeah.
My comment was on that, too. It seems like reputation comes into play there, too. If I'm constantly blogging and I'm constantly wrong, people are just going to start ignoring me.
Yeah. and also, the other thing is that there is a huge self-correction mechanism. When I do something stupid, first of all, you've seen my readers jump on my case, right? Right away, boom.
No.
Well, and internally, if I'm saying something that doesn't match with the Microsoft point of view, my coworkers are jumping on my case, and my executives and the PR team, because they all have my phone number, and it's on my blog, and they can all call me and go, "You're way offline. You're way out of line. Please, correct that or whatever, and stop posting that way." And if I continue posting that way, then we're going to have a career discussion, you know? And HR is going to visit my office someday, and we're going to have this little career discussion, you know, do you really want to work here or not? You know?
The self-correcting...
And I want to work here, by the way.
I tried so hard to get him fired. Do you realize how many more books we would have sold that way? But no, those guys were too smart for me. It goes to several questions answered, but accuracy, the blogosphere is an incredibly self-correcting organism. One of the things I marveled at, and Wiley saved a few dollars, is we didn't ask the blogosphere to proofread us. We didn't try to be proof perfect. There's people at Wiley that get paid to do that. But we get all these comments saying, paragraph 5, line 6, you need an S after that word. And at the same time, one of my first blogs, I said, I feel like Thomas Paine. I'm a pamphleteer doing it for the love of my fellow people. And I got a 4,000-word comment from a professor at Princeton, New Jersey, setting me straight about Thomas Paine, and who once sued Ben Franklin over royalties, you know. And how did he find me? How did this happen? Turned out I made contact with him, but it was a great lesson. He was a professor writing the definitive book on Thomas Paine and the Battle of Trenton, and he was using the search tools so that any time somebody wrote the words Thomas Paine, it would come immediately to him. Yep. You know, and I got wise to how it works.
And that's a real lesson for corporations. The biggest thing that I got out of blogging, and I think Microsoft has gotten out of blogging, is not having me talk and tell people what's cool here. It's that I can listen to everybody really easily. Anybody who writes the word Microsoft gets thrown into a box in my Outlook, and I get to go through that and say, hey, this guy's saying he's having problems with his Xbox. Well, I'll write, you know, John Percaro over in the Xbox team and have it taken care of. This lets me listen to the customer in a whole new way, in a very scalable way, and a very efficient way.
Okay. You're gonna cut us off, but it addresses a lot of people. When I get comments from people I haven't heard, there's an intuitive feeling about who is speaking authentically and who's doing something contrived. And I can be wrong, but I find overwhelmingly, if there's somebody I don't know and I go and just get no links, if I keep watching that person for a while, I'm going to find that that person's okay from my first inkling. Same time, when the person who's found a new way of trolling me lately first appeared on my site where she seems to be spending most of her life, I had a feeling there's something smarmy going on here. This woman is trying to game me somehow or other, and sure enough, within a few days, I was certain of it. So there is this whole self-correcting mechanism that is what's keeping the blogosphere a very clean channel. I think the look over there says we just finished.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shel.